Okay, let's get started for this afternoon session. The first speaker this afternoon is Dr. James Lyne, who is Director of Technology Strategy at Sophos. Actually, that picture is that man.
Serious case of identity theft, I think you'll find. It's actually kind of interesting because I think that this picture is perhaps a little more appropriate. Napoleon Dynamite being a very fitting pseudonym for me. So good afternoon, everyone. Did you enjoy lunch? Yes. Excellent. Did you have coffee? Did they warn you about this session before you came back? Because no one is sitting in the front row. So you all clearly know what's coming. My presentations tend to come with a bit of a health and safety warning. I'm going to be doing a series of live demonstrations of some of the techniques that the bad guys have been using against websites and our computers to steal data. And I'm going to be talking about the 9.3333333, you get the idea, ways that data goes walkies. And talking a little bit about what we as end users, we as an industry in security can do to solve these problems. I guess the best way to start this presentation is to look a little bit about the history of malicious code in the cybersecurity problem domain, because things haven't always been this way. Now, I have a favorite piece of malware. You're in a relatively unique category of people when you have a favorite piece of malware, I should warn you. It's also a really poor pickup line for bars. I did once try the line, "I own the second lowest IP address on the internet." Can also report that was not a win. So the first wave of malicious code, my favorite piece of malware, there used to be this email attachment that you would receive, and you double click on it for various social engineering purposes, and this big green worm would appear on your screen. Now, how many people here are in security, directly? Okay, excellent. How many of you practice the brilliant security technique that is covering your desktop in lots and lots of icons so that if the bad guys hack your computer, it's really hard for them to find confidential data? No? Okay, I always thought that was quite a good one, personally. So that normally gets a laugh. You guys are clearly tired. That normally doesn't get a laugh, so I just don't understand Irish sense of humour, or indeed people, also women, most things in fact. But malware I can do. So the first wave of malicious code, this big green worm would appear on the stage and it would eat all of your icons before defecating in the bottom left-hand corner. It was awesome. There was the time where we annoyed a virus writer so much that they took a photo of our head of PR at the time, Graham Cluley, a gentleman many of you may have come across. And when you were infected with this virus, his face would appear in the middle of your computer screen. And you had to throw coconuts in this digital coconut shy at his face to be able to use your computer again. Freaking awesome. Malware was cool. And then, about 8 or 9 years ago now, we saw a shift to the second wave of malicious code, the more financially motivated. We started to see things like Britney Spears, nude and naked sideways.exe. Real example, I should add, before you get excited. And always confused me because I don't know how you can be nude and naked at the same time. I always thought they were the same thing, but clearly, again, something I've missed. The Nigerian banker that wants to give you $63 million because you, sir, he likes your face and you're feeling lucky. It's a wonderful face, by the way. Or perhaps some gentleman that wants to sell you a Rolex for $5, and Rolex has 2 L's in it, right? We've all seen these ridiculous emails and we've kind of got used to filtering them out. But that's been the world of cybercrime, a high volume of Trojans and scamming designed to steal money. But interestingly, what we've seen over the last couple of years is a shift to this third wave of malicious code, these organized cybercriminals. And yes, that is a bed of money. It's amazing, isn't it? Really would quite like one of those, even though the currency looks slightly dubious. Really, what's happened is the bad guys have developed an illicit economy where they're working together, selling each other services and tools and trading. And in this presentation, I want to explore that theme a little bit more and then talk about the top 9.3 ways that data goes walkies and what we can all do to get to grips with this issue. A starting tenet of scale. Today in Sophos labs, we see on average 150,000 individual new pieces of malicious code every single day. Compare that to last year at 95,000, which I thought was pretty bad. And the year before that, hovering around 45,000, 20 and 5 before. A 5-fold increase over only a couple of years ago. A vast increase in not just the quantity of malicious code, but the quality of malicious code too. We find a new infected web page every 4 seconds now on the web. And it's fascinating how we all hold on to these stereotypes about IT security. I'll demonstrate a few of them through my presentation. But when someone gets infected with a virus, whether it's friends, family, or home, computer at work, the very first question that we tend to ask people is, which porn site did you go to? Right? Which bad site? And they go, oh, I didn't do anything. And you go, no, really, which bad site did you go to? And they own up to the fact that they were trying to go to www.bigcricketballs.com. Don't go there, haven't tested that website, by the way. And it turned out to be not the content they were expecting. So that's actually not how most malicious code gets distributed today. The majority of it comes from good websites, legitimate businesses like you guys here having their website hacked. And we'll come back to how that works and what you can do about it in a short while. So an astonishing volume of malicious code, very creative mechanisms of profiting and making money. Scamming, evolving from the age-old use of email into using black search engine optimization, tricking Google into redirecting users trying to do relatively normal things to bad web pages. 36 million people last year, just the measurable portion, purchased drugs online from fake scamming sites like this. So I don't know if I believe the figure of 27 billion or whether I believe that cybercrime is bigger than the drugs industry. I don't know because I can't measure it. But I can say from these small data points that it's a big enough problem that we should all care about it. Now, I talked about this maturity of the cyber criminals in the problem domain today. It's actually pretty astonishing how far these guys have developed. They've got cloud-based services that they're trading with each other. They've got technical support. You can call up a Russian criminal gang, and if you don't mind the thick Russian accent, it's actually quite good quality technical support, I should note. I've called a few of them, it's quite fun. You can wind them up a little bit, kind of waste their time. Clearly I have no life. If you were wondering at the beginning of the presentation, I've now confirmed it. This is avcheck.org, an illegitimate testing site. You go here and you buy credits, you type in your credit card details as a criminal gang member. You probably don't use your own credit card details, that would be ridiculous, obviously. You steal someone else's, buy some credits, and you come in here and you upload your virus, worm, or Trojan designed to steal data, and they run quality assurance tests against antivirus products. And then they produce a nice, pretty PDF report, with nice 3D graphics and those things. Like it was built on a Mac, basically. You know what I mean? You can always tell a Mac presentation, really kind of pretty. And do you know what I'm talking about? Yes. Any Mac users here? Yeah, really? No Mac users at all? Yeah, okay, you look like a Mac user. I was going to pick on you, I'm going to be honest. It's, testing the hypothesis that I've been running for 18 months now. Do you drink lattes? Really? Do you ever wear a mock turtleneck? Chinos? Yeah, the full Steve Jobs outfit? Yeah. Fantastic. So I was presenting at this conference once in Singapore, and it was quite good fun. Because I ask this question regularly, my profile stereotype of Mac users, and I am one as well, by the way, and I love lattes and do the Steve Jobs blessing ritual several times a week. And this gentleman stood up at the third row and kind of scrambled to the front of the stage and looked through. And he stood up, and in his left hand he had his Mac. In his right hand he had his latte. And he was wearing a mock turtleneck and chinos, and he looked like Steve Jobs. It was amazing. But the best thing was right next to him on the left was a guy with a beard down to about here. You know, the kind of massive, you know, I look like a troll, and it would be perfectly normal if I was carrying an axe beard. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yes. So I just looked at him and pointed and went, Unix, version 4.71 FreeBSD. And he just went, yes. So anyone here got leather pads on there? No? Okay, no Novell NetWare users. Good. Right. So anyway, stereotypes proven. Back to avcheck.org. It produces a lovely report that shows you exactly how your malicious code is detected and gives you tips on how better you could avoid detection. Crime packs. Software as a service crime packs, generating exploits designed to target each of us, receiving updates on a daily basis with the latest day zero exploits designed to steal information from our businesses. I saw one of these the other day, only recently, quite a fascinating phenomenon. They built in like an iTunes app store into their application. And you could go in there and you could basically buy exploits exclusively or based on the number of users that had already purchased it. So kind of like a stock market. I should note it was much prettier than the Apple iTunes store, which will definitely have Steve Jobs kind of rolling sleeplessly at night in bed. So you could go in there and directly buy vulnerabilities. Here we have a marketplace for cybercrime. We've got services like the ability for the bad guys to crack passwords that they steal, even if they're hashed. And we've got the bad guys now expanding to a wider array of platforms than ever before. Because, frankly, for many, many years, security has been about fixing Microsoft screw-ups. But increasingly, they're acting quite responsibly. And these new devices are ending up in our networks, in our homes, with sensitive information that's worth stealing. We saw a campaign where the bad guys were offering to pay 43 cents per infected Mac through a criminal franchise network versus 21 for a PC. Because they're able to extort valuable data, hold that presence for longer. Mac users tend to be reasonably affluent. See, I gave you something back. It's, you know, are you married? You okay? Let's just we'll believe you. So look at these things here. Fake antivirus for the Mac. You know, the Security Center. AV Defender, really convincing product, follows all of the style guidelines that you'd expect from Steve Jobs. You know, really, really convincing stuff with just as nasty a payload as the PC. A backdoor that allows the bad guys in to steal data. Password cracking of computers that lie all around it. So more and more of these examples of fake antivirus. Now, who here has seen fake antivirus? Yep, most of you have come across it. That's because in December alone, when I last measured it, I saw 100,000 new variants of fake antivirus, which I think we can all agree is rather a lot. And I was going to take a brief detour from the PowerPoint and just show you... Is anyone epileptic, by the way? Apparently that would be a problem. And just show you exactly how this fake AV and cybercrime stuff works and how the bad guys get access to a computer. Because I think many of us have seen, you know, fake antivirus running and we've heard about threats, but haven't necessarily witnessed exactly what the bad guys are capable of. So here I've got a really scary looking computer, which is my bad guy's computer, running all the software to take over a PC. Now over here, saw the flicker of the PlayStation network there. Excellent. I've got a little email program loaded. Now, here I've got an email campaign that is very, very popular with the bad guys, the notion of company salary packages. If you take a CD and write salaries on it and throw it on the car park floor, it is guaranteed that one of your employees will pick it up and put it into their computer. It's astonishing. natural curiosity kicks in immediately. So what I've got here is just a little PDF file called salary.pdf that I've been emailed. Just as easily could have come through a web browser like the majority of modern malware. So I'm going to open it up, and I'm running a vulnerable version of Adobe PDF, like the majority of users on the internet. Interesting fact. Last year, 2010 to 2011 financial, when you measure the stats, less than 1% of the vulnerabilities the bad guys created in these crime packs were for Windows operating systems. They were all targeted at these nasty PDF products and Flash and Firefox and the browser. So let's skip over here. This is the PDF that I have loaded in the other window. And the browser over there, you might have noticed, has crashed. Does anyone here read PDF? Didn't think so. That happened once. It was amazing. This guy put his hand up from the back of the room. He worked for Adobe. And he came to the front. And we got a flip chart. And he drew out the PDF by hand. He could read PDF with his mind. I think that is pretty impressive, isn't it? You would definitely give that a round of applause, wouldn't you? Anyway, so he taught me to do it. We flipped back round to the audience after 5 or 6 minutes of distraction. And how can I describe this? Can you all do this? Yes? So everyone in the audience was like that. Clearly, I assumed, aghast with our mathematical prowess, in reality thinking those guys are never getting laid ever. So what's happened is on the right-hand side, we've got this window which was blank. And now on my Linux computer, I've got a command prompt for a Windows PC. And what this has done is this PDF has caused our client computer over here to crash in a very selective way, which has loaded malicious code onto the computer, and my victim's computer has now connected back out to the attacking system. Okay? Now, this is perfectly normal stuff. The user will close the window and carry on, because let's be honest, Internet Explorer, Adobe PDF crashes 15 times a day anyway, right? It's pretty normal. So let's skip over to our attacking system. What we've now got is complete control over that PC. I can go into the My Documents folder, where I can see the very confidential documents, the medical database, anything that might be installed. Anything that you have on your computer, the bad guys now have access to. Okay? But worse still, they can create admin accounts, install screen monitoring software, take photos of you in your webcam, and if your computer happens to be in your bedroom, it's very hard to explain to your other half why you're now on a porn site and that it was an accident. They probably won't believe you. So what I'm going to do is trigger the installation of some fake antivirus. Please prepare for a ooh. Ooh. Come on. Ooh, nothing? Really? Not even out of pity? Ooh, ooh, that was it. Okay, I like you, thank you. I will hug you later. Oh, it was him, okay. Good to know, all right. Hugging deferred. So right, here we've got our Antivirus Plus, and a very credible security product, because it's got a little face of a devil, which I always think is a nice touch in a security product. Warning, your logins and passwords, credit card and bank account information is being stolen. Your personal data being stolen, your IP and computer being used by hackers for illegal activities. Well, that's good, because they're being honest with you about everything they're now doing to you. Okay? So that's, at least a slight thing to give for them. So let's ignore these threats. Just behind, this is beautiful. Does everyone recognize the Windows Security Center? Yeah? Very normal thing for users to see. They've tricked the Windows Security Center here into saying there's an unregistered version of Antivirus Plus, which is a made-up, non-existent AV product. So if imitation is the highest form of flattery, I guess I should feel really, really flattered. So they've tricked the user through Microsoft into thinking they're running something legitimate. Now, if we go and have a look at the product, you can see it's a real functioning product. with all of the kinds of settings that you would expect to see in a security product. For example, they've so accurately replicated it, they've got the kind of facile, ridiculous options that security vendors put in their products. Advanced detection. What is that? Does anyone know? You should ask the McAfee CTO, because they've got one called that. And I kind of asked him in public once, and he was quite rude about it. Anyway, this is exactly the kind of ridiculous stuff that you see in real security products. You get this slider. You know, you've all seen that it goes from 1 to 48, and you're supposed to put it somewhere to say what level of security you'd like. And when you set it to 37, the AI vector-driven ontological analysis engine calling kernel 32 DLL from Internet Explorer EX in an x86 architecture, a particular range of memory, which when using Shinkensen byte encoding access by user B and IP address C at 3037 on Tuesday is particularly good or bad. And you decide, you know, based on that, that, you know, malware is bad. Clearly, you're all following me. Where on earth is the checkbox that says stop bad stuff? Right? Can we not start to simplify this industry a little bit? Anyway, in the background, this fake antivirus is now off stealing my information and posting it back to the bad guys. And that is what we see 150,000 samples of every single day at the moment. All right, I'm going to switch back to my presentation and move on to some different areas of attack vector. I just want to check, is anyone bored? Okay, good. By the way, how many iPhone users are there here? Cool, yeah. Windows Phone 7? Yeah, a few of you, yeah. No, it's actually, it's brave. It's, Android? Okay, Nokia. Really? Really? What kind of Nokia? What have you got? Let's have a look. Oh, can I touch it? That is retro.
It's a phone.
And retro is another way of saying really old and crap, but, you know, that's cool. And brilliant, because actually quite hard to compromise as long as you've got Bluetooth turned off. You have got Bluetooth turned on. Excellent. Good. Can you browse the internet on those now? Nokias do that? Wow, it's crazy. Oh, right, okay. No, and there's actually, you know, our CEO uses a Nokia from about 8 years ago, and it's the coolest phone in the world. So, anyway, hacktivism, an increasing trend, a throwback from the old ages. You see, most malware of late has been about trying to profit and make money by stealing credit card details. But we've seen Anonymous and LulzSec and other such hacking gangs going after these kinds of big targets, launching distributed denial of service attacks and stealing data. So quite an interesting model of the threat. Now, I thought you might be interested to see exactly how all this Sony stuff went wrong. So what I've brought is a little replica of the Sony website with a generic vulnerability in it that shows basically exactly how the bad guys stole data. So it's really quite hard to see that for some bizarre reason. I'm not really sure why, but never mind. There's a username and a password field, okay? And what you can do on this particular UI is type in, you know, a username and a password, just like that. Log in, and it will return your account settings, username, password, and reward code. Very simple function like we see on lots of web applications. How many people here have websites? I don't believe you. How many people of you really have websites? How many of you don't have websites? That's fascinating. Why do you not have websites? As a business, I mean, not like personally, I don't expect you to blog about your cat. I mean, you could. By the way, if anyone was wondering, it is impossible for a cat to use an iPad. I was asked that question several times in the break. So if you have a web application for your business, if you know someone that's running a website, the odds are today they've got search fields, login capabilities, and dynamic content rendering on their site. Very normal thing, just like this. So here's exactly how the Sony breaches happen. It's a 15-year-old vulnerability that is very well understood, but people still fall victim to. And that's kind of the interesting point that LulzSec have been trying to make, albeit with rather inappropriate methods. What I'm typing in here and I'll read this through to you in a second, is a very simple logic statement, okay? Now, most of you can probably read that. What it says is Lyne, tick, or 1 equals 1. Now, what happens when a website goes and talks to the back end is it asks a database a question, like, give me all of the search records that contains this particular piece of data. And all of these vulnerabilities come down to web applications letting you type in apostrophes, hyphens, semicolons, things that you shouldn't be able to. So what we're now saying is, where the username equals Lyne, tick, or 1 equals 1. Are there any quantum physicists in the room? So we all agree that 1 equals 1. Excellent. I just wanted to check that. That can be quite an extensive debate on occasion. So when we run this search, the database processes it, and instead of spitting out my details, spits out the username and password and reward code of every user that it's got in this particular database. Now, there are lots of variations on this attack, changing things around, but it basically comes down to web applications failing to process characters and giving you this kind of information. Staggeringly easy to perform, and that's the basis of most of these attacks that have been going on. And I'll come back in a short while in my presentation about how you can deal with these kinds of attacks. Social networking is also increasingly a very, very popular attack vector for the bad guys. If I could draw all of your attention to the left-hand side of the screen for a moment, like really, like turn your heads that way, okay? Then you'll see that we've got a Bank of America higher standards online banking alert, security updates, very, very popular attack vector for the bad guys via social media. I've seen campaigns against local Irish banks, Abbey National, a particular favourite still, which is kind of bizarre. I can't really understand why they'd still have customers. HSBC, all of the banks fall victim to these kinds of attacks, launched via social media, trying to convince people to type in their username and password. But the classic attack of Cleo Vaughan, hey, want to see me naked, and a webcam and have a dirty chat, is still a very popular attack vector. Now, I mentioned Britney Spears, nude and naked sideways. If anyone was wondering, she's the #1 the cybercriminals love to target. Can any of you guess who the #2 most popular celebrity might be? You should leave. Just go now. Just. Anyone else? Pamela Anderson, that's a respectable choice. Paris Hilton, that's where all the men in the room usually go, oh yes, yes. Paris Hilton. Angelina Jolie. Yeah, exactly that reaction, yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. Can anyone imagine who the 3rd most popular might be when I last ran this search? Batman. Yes. Who are all these people that are clicking on Batman links? Isn't that just a bit weird? I always theorize that it might be children being social engineered on people's work PCs into clicking on links, but actually I'm redacting that theory. I think it's just secretly we all have a bit of a thing for Batman. So, you know, do you have a bit of a thing for Batman? Of course. Who doesn't? So these social networking attacks are very, very popular today, convincing people to click on these links and download malicious code. But there's a whole range of new attack vectors starting to appear as well. Location technologies starting to feature very, very heavily. And to demonstrate the power of such technologies, I thought this was a rather fun example. A certain gentleman had his Mac stolen in a cafe, and this is a photo of when the person that stole the Mac first opened it. You see in this particular case, his Mac had a 3G dongle, which was very nice, and he'd installed some screen monitoring command and control software so that he could monitor his Mac. Bit of a strange thing to do. This is where he later turned it on at home. Notice the person that is asleep or possibly dead on the settee behind. So that's getting pretty interesting. You know, here we can see he's deleting. Actually, you really can't see anything at all there, can you? Here he's deleting the profile of the user So he knows that he's stolen the Mac, and then he goes and logs into his Gmail account. Brilliant. So we can see his username. I'm not really sure what's happening there. That probably shouldn't be in this deck. And that's him sleeping later on. That's quite good fun. Anyway, eventually this was launched into a social media campaign where they started posting this guy's location data with the Mac constantly. And people online started to follow this and were trying to hunt him down. And eventually 2 people managed to accost him in a cafe in New York and get his Mac back. So there's the power of location technology and social media for good. Anyway, so I've been ranting about the threat and all the different ways that it can go wrong. Let's talk about the 9.33 ways and the things that you should all be thinking about in your business to keep yourself safe. At number 9, respectable top position, physical security. It's not all about cybersecurity. Don't forget things like stroll in and grab, where the bad guys will drive a car through your front gates and come and steal your computers. At number 8, honourable mention, alcohol. Always a wonderful source of data theft. Do you actually cover acceptable use of alcohol in your employee contracts? Sounds kind of a bizarre thing to cover, but actually pretty important. Lots of data losses now being attributable to users driving a BlackBerry when drunk. If you have a Nokia, it's fine. You can't do any damage. It's not useful enough. Malware ranking in at number 7. These threats that I've been showing you doing data theft. Mass storage, still a massive problem. They bring in the bad stuff and they take out the good stuff. Deployment of encryption technology to prevent USB keys from wandering out with your information. Still a very frequent point of concern for most businesses. Not so smartphones. This array of mobile devices. And we've got a huge challenge here because you see, for many years, users have been using these mobile phones without any concern of security problems. With the traditional PC, they've kind of got used to the idea that a Nigerian banker isn't going to give them $63 million. I mean, spot check. How many of you here have ever actually had a Nigerian banker walk up to you physically in the street and offer you $63 million? No? You're smiling. It must have happened to you. It's the world's best kept secret. It's the club of people that got all that money from that Nigerian guy. But users haven't experienced that same threat on smartphones, and so they've started to assume they're eminently secure. Typing in their credit card details, buying applications online, buying music, doing all this kind of great stuff. The thing is, when you actually go looking, these mobile devices are a bit like Windows 95. Does anyone remember Windows 95? Oh, yes. I still have scars on my back from Windows 95, which I used to show people mid-presentation, but I'm now banned from entering France. You can argue whether that's a good or a bad thing. Regardless, these devices do have vulnerabilities, and the reason they haven't been so extensively targeted is because until recently, they were phones, or they were performing multimedia functions that weren't really very profitable to the bad guys. That's changing as we all use these devices for an increasing portion of the day. That's changing as we put more and more of our sensitive data on these and stop using our laptops, a trend that is very prolific in many businesses. So we're going to have to find ways to protect these devices. And it's going to be different to the PC, but it's going to be a high priority over the next couple of years. Lost laptops. This is actually getting whiter as we go, which is really impressive. And I'm going to claim that it's a Zen theme. It's very Steve Jobs, it's kind of existential. You don't need the pictures. It's all about the ginger afro. This is a MacBook Air, and I've picked on this MacBook Air in particular to highlight lost laptops. Still actually one of the biggest vectors of data loss that there is. In particular, the MacBook Air, because you can fold it up and it will fit neatly inside the magazine cover of Vogue. I've never bought Vogue, by the way. It's not a rumor I want to start. And then you can throw it in the trash. It's really hard to explain to IT how you lost your laptop. These things are still turning up everywhere. 30,000 of them a week in Heathrow. Absolutely astonishing. Could be quite good fun to call up the local airport here and see whether it's more or less and then attribute it to the drinking of Guinness. Seems a reasonable extrapolation to me. Third parties, a massive, massive cause of data loss recently. Epsilon, a massive data breach of emails and people's personal information. And I love this picture, by the way. Third-party facepalm. For when there is so much fail, you need that extra bit of outside help, which I think is something we can all relate to. You see, in the world we live in now, we not only have to try and secure our businesses and our devices, but we've got a responsibility to somehow protect data when it goes to third parties and partners. We've got a responsibility to make sure that they are also doing the right things when they handle information. And that's exceedingly difficult. Oopsie daisy at number 2, still astonishingly popular. In fact, I really wanted to put this at number 1, but because of recent headlines, it got bounced down to number 2. Making mistakes. We've all done it, haven't we? Where you have that email with that sensitive data attached, and you type in the name and you hit send, and as you see the email leaving, you notice that you've for some reason sent the corporate accounts to your mother. Okay, that's probably a bad example. Something possibly worse than that. And then we get what can only be described as the data loss feeling, where you go white, and you get a sick feeling here, and you kind of bend over a little bit and go, We've all been there, haven't we? It's actually quite accurate. See, you're looking awkwardly like you've done that a few times, yeah? Something you need to own up to. We don't have mandatory breach disclosure in this country yet, so it's fine. Oopsie daisy is a huge part of modern IT security. You see, we can all get very caught up in Russian criminal gangs and, Chinese hackers trying to come after our data, but that means that we'll often miss this point of data loss, users making mistakes. There have been many technologies that have tried to deal with this situation. The aptly named DLP, data loss prevention, data leakage prevention, or as I prefer to call it, disastrously ludicrous project. You see, no one's deploying it. And no one's deploying it because it starts with this idea that somehow we're all going to find all of our data, which sounds hard, I've got to admit, because I think I'm kind of still struggling with patching. And once we've found all of our data, we're going to classify it into different buckets of types of information. And then, the beautiful bit, we are going to write a policy that dictates exactly who can and who can't access information at what time and when. It takes about 10 minutes before the CFO decides to fire someone in IT when they couldn't upload their end-of-year accounts, invariably a couple of minutes before the deadline at the end of the year. CFOs do that. And that's because in IT security we take the wrong attitude sometimes. We take the attitude of trying to be black and white. And that's got to be a Nokia. Motorola? Android. Really? That's retro. That's very cool. And that's also another way of saying old and crap, but It's because we take the attitude of black and white. We try and say things are good or bad. But unfortunately, in the complexity of all the devices we're now using and all of the data, we don't have that luxury anymore. Let's think of an alternative doctrine here. A doctrine that says, if Dermot, who's standing at the back of the room, who's a Sophos salesperson, but you see he doesn't have a tie on, so he's not going to do a presentation about pricing SKUs. He doesn't even know how to tie a tie, in fact. Always a pleasure, never a chore. If Dermot goes to send out a list of 1,000 names and addresses via email, what if we pop up a message and say, Dermot, we've noticed you're about to send out some really, really sensitive data. And we're not sure that you want to do that. If you want to carry on, say yes. If you're not sure, consult IT. Check out the policy, find out how to handle it securely. And then the magic buzzword. This incident will be logged. In almost all cases, users will do the right thing. And accidents may happen, but it will enable them to continue with critical business operations when people in IT security get it wrong, which sooner or later happens. So a shift from draconian controls to embracing the user with technology and trying to help them make the right decision, building a culture of caring about information. And last but not least, web application failure. As I talked about earlier, SQL injection and all these kinds of things. If you go online, you'll find a wealth of best practices that tell you exactly how to deal with these kinds of issues. It's a set of vulnerabilities that have been understood for many, many, many years. And sometimes in security, we have a tendency to get carried away and worried about the high-end threat when we haven't sorted out our house of cards at the low end, when we're still falling for these basic vulnerabilities. So get online and apply those best practices in the area of SQL injection. You'll find lots of best practice advice on this topic on sophos.com. Now I want to show you one more interesting demonstration, and then I'll start to close up, because otherwise everything will go red and the end of the world will come about. One last demonstration on why mobile devices are really, really stupid, and also wireless technology, but a reflection on the times that we're in. Here's the thing. I've got this setup here, which I've restricted to not capture any data, scanning this room's mobile devices, joining wireless networks. And normally when I do this routine, I get out a Pringles can, some tin foil, a paper clip, and build a make-do scanner. But last time I did that, a woman at the back of the room screamed, "It's a radiation gun," and ran out of the back. Which, technically speaking, it is kind of a radiation gun. That's quite accurate. So I did look for some tin foil earlier to make some tin foil hats for you all. You could wear during this part of the presentation, but failed miserably. So I've kept things suitably low tech. This is something you may not know about mobile devices that demonstrates how truly vulnerable they really are. You take the average mobile device, like the iPhone. You'll very often find users connecting them to free public Wi-Fi, to your corporate network, to all these different places, which makes total sense. But did you know that these mobiles constantly broadcast the names of the networks that they've been connected to? And don't worry, you're not doing anything wrong. They all do it. Apple and other vendors are. So I can see here a rotating list of different devices, mine included, I'm actually popping up on that list intermittently, of mobile devices connecting to wireless networks. Now here, I can choose one of these names, like Matthew's free Wi-Fi. Thank you very much, Matthew, if you just turned that on. And I can create my own wireless network with exactly the same name. Here's what will happen. If I, on my iPhone, have a configured wireless network, BT Open Zone, very popular, where I'm from, then when I create my network with the same properties, my iPhone will automatically connect to that network without asking the user anything. And it will then start to route my email, my Facebook, my Twitter, all of my corporate traffic through that connection, exposing potentially insecure usernames and passwords, or allowing the bad guys to sniff sensitive transactions, because users always hit continue if there are warnings anyway. So this is an outstanding vulnerability in the design of mobile devices and Wi-Fi that demonstrates why network security is a huge challenge. And clearly more of you are turning your phones on just to get onto this list, which is slightly sick. So please stop, because sooner or later the list will get too long and my computer will crash. So it's very, very easy to trick these mobile devices into doing things that they shouldn't. Now, in this presentation, I would love to spend lots and lots of time going through more and more different techniques of how the bad guys can exploit mobile devices. But I think we all broadly accept that cybercrime is a problem. We all broadly accept that these techniques can be performed on lots of computers on a daily basis. We've all seen the impact of SQL injection, where I showed you that 1 equals 1. Please don't go back to the office and when they say, "What did Sophos teach you?" say that 1 equals 1. Give them some context. Also that they have really bizarre gingerhead presenters, bad message, that look like Napoleon Dynamite, good message. The thing is, what do we do about it? 10% of businesses globally, according to surveys from IDC, run a technology called behavioral HIPS. Don't worry about the details. It's very simple. This is a technology that's designed to proactively try and deal with new malicious code rather than reactively, much as the themes that were touched on earlier, for example, Paul in his excellent scene setting presentation. But only 10% of businesses are running this technology. It doesn't even cost anything. It's built in to the modern security offering. We have it right there and ready and waiting for Sophos customers. Don't worry if you're a new customer, you've installed it. We just turned it on for you because we decided that was better. But still, an astonishingly small percentage. The thing is, we're developing more and more and more and more and more technology, but actually, people aren't using it. So, get online, get a copy of the Sophos Security Threat Report from our stand, talk to our local experts, get onto Naked Security on the blogs, use these resources, and if we all leave here and patch more than the operating system, go patch your Firefox, Internet Explorer, PDF, etc. Modernize your protection, not just signature AV, but HIT. Use a strong password. Follow these simple best practices. And critically, if we work on building user awareness, then we can do something interesting. Go to the Sophos stand and get a copy of the security toolkits with sample policies and videos that you can use to take to your users and show them how to practice security. We've done the work for you, so all you've got to do is put your logo on it, take credit for it, and get a pay rise. Because, most importantly of all, it would be easy to leave this presentation thinking that was another vendor talking about how bad cybersecurity is and that we should all run more of these controls and care. But actually, I have a bit of a different message, and it's this. There are one hell of a lot more of us legitimate internet users than there are the bad guys. And in most cases, it's not the high-end clever threat that's causing us to trip up. It's the basics of passwords, secure databases, SQL injection, patching. And if we can start to run more of these controls and close down that gap, it's not even going to cost us any money, then we can make life much, much harder for those cyber criminals. Cyber victory. Thank you very much.